So, Governor, it's your Office of Planning and Budget that projected that $500 million less in revenue. You then tack onto it the possibility of having about the same amount in additional costs in the form of health care, food assistance. How does a state like yours fill that gap?
Yeah, and this is affecting red states, blue states. It doesn't matter. Fundamentally, Medicaid, which has been funded federally with the state match, is being cut back. What does that mean for Colorado? It means hundreds of thousands of Coloradans will lose the health care coverage they have today. But it also means higher rates for everybody. Again, across the entire country, when you have more people without insurance, the costs get shifted, since they don't have a payer, onto people with insurance. And so, like in every other state, we're going to be wrestling with everyday customers who get their insurance from their work, who buy it on their own, having to pay a lot more next year, and that's bad news for Americans.
Governor, I appreciate, the fact that you have blue state governors, as Simone noted, looking for ways to stand the ground and protect their citizens. I'm just curious, through the National Governors Association, for example, are you hearing anything from red state governors? Because I would dare say that, while California, New York, Maryland, your state are concerned and taking necessary steps, it's been largely crickets from red state governors who are most impacted by this bill, particularly in areas like SNAP. In a state like Tennessee, you're looking at 20% of the people on SNAP will lose their benefit. In the state of Tennessee, that's about $1.4 billion that they receive in SNAP benefits. I don't know if the governor's talking about replacing that money, how they're going to do it. Alabama, Mississippi, what are you hearing from other governors outside of the blue state quarters, if anything? Because I would think that there would be sort of a concerted effort, everybody kind of pulling and rowing in the same direction to sort of get the federal government to recognize the impact, but maybe not.
You're absolutely right to point out that, generally speaking, many of the redder states have a higher percentage of people on Medicaid and will lose even more funding pro rata than states like California, New York, Colorado. So you're absolutely right to point that out. That those governors and their budget folks are very worried, whether they say it publicly or not. They're losing a higher amount pro rata than even our state is. So, again, they're going to be having to make some of those same tough choices, throwing people off. Are they going to find some other way to cost shift? But ultimately, when less people have health care coverage, it raises rates for everybody, and it worsens the health outcomes for folks. Folks die sooner from treatable disease. The tragic human face of this for anybody who's lost somebody in their family before their time, they know that can weigh on people even more than the dollars and cents.
I want to ask specifically about the rural hospitals and the impact of Medicaid. But just to follow up on Michael's question, Governor, so you haven't heard any complaints from your Republican governors? Because for folks out there, the National Governors Association is a bipartisan group. And when I went to the White House, they were in a bipartisan fashion arguing for their states and what they needed when it came to COVID. Are they doing so in a bipartisan way right now? Are you talking with them, or are they not playing ball?
Well, look, I think that Republican governors are hesitant to criticize this president, whether it's out of fear or out of affinity. You'd have to ask them. Certainly, they're dealing with the same real-life issues. You can't imagine a way $500 million or $1 billion gap in your state budget, having to make your budget balanced. States have to do that. We do that in Colorado. Every state does that. We can't just do deficit spending like the federal government is now going to do even more of with his plan that increases the deficit by over $1 trillion.
Okay, let's talk rural hospitals. A lot about the Medicaid cuts and whatnot, but I think what people might be missing is even if you aren't on Medicaid, these cuts will in fact affect you. What does this mean for rural hospitals in Colorado? And are you going to be able to help keep these hospitals open?
We're going to do what we can, as I'm sure most states are, but it's certainly not going to be enough to replace the losses that they experience from these enormous Medicaid cuts. And many of these rural hospitals have been barely viable, barely able to hold their ground as it is. Losing a lot of their payers will simply render them unable to be run on an ongoing basis. So I think you're going to see across the entire country a number of rural providers going out of business and folding up, which means that people will have to travel even further to get the care they need. Now, states are going to do what we can, but there's no theoretical way that without states, like Texas or Alabama or Mississippi raising taxes an enormous amount, they're simply not going to be able to make up the difference.